Hi, everyone. I am Prisha Soraya, the Director of Content Creation for Mission MathMinds. And with us, we have Nima. Would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is Nima Parikh. I'm from out of Denver, Colorado. I founded and am president of Mezzanine Consulting. It's a boutique consulting firm helping clients innovate and execute high-level visions and business strategies and bridging the gap between that vision and the day-to-day running of the business, hence the name Mezzanine.
Is there how did you get into, how did you start to create your own business? How did you get to where you are today?
Well, I started out of college. I went to strategy consulting, and that gave me a lot of those soft skills that I think you need in almost any business situation. From there, I went back to get my MBA, and I knew I wanted to focus on marketing and entrepreneurship. So when I came out of business school from grad school, I went right into more of the traditional brand consulting firms, or I'm not sorry, brand firms that are product CPG. So that stands for consumer product goods, consumer packaged goods. So I worked with Nestle USA, and then I also worked with Claro. And from there, I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to go to a place that didn't already do brand or didn't have that discipline as a part of their day-to-day running of the business. So I started at IBM, and IBM at the time was looking for people with a traditional brand background to come in and really establish the brand discipline. Before that, they really saw brand as just an icon, and I think they, under a new CEO, realized that brand is more than that. It's an actual strategy, and it's a way to run a business. So that's
Um,
where I came in.
if I can interrupt you for a second, I'm sure a bunch of people watching this video don't know what IBM is. Um,
Oh, that's fun because that's not sure my generation. So IBM is one of the largest worldwide technology companies. They recently split between IBM and Kyndryl, and I would surmise that most people don't know which one is which and who's doing what right now. But back in the day, IBM was, if you wanted to do technology, that's where you did it. So thank you for that. Thank you for aging me literally right in front of everybody. But that's a fair question. But IBM was, ask your parents, I would say. IBM was the place to work. If you wanted to do technology, that was the place you were going to do it. And that was the place that everyone was proud to be a part of. Nowadays, there's there's Amazon, there's Google. Think of IBM as the Apple, Google, Amazon only player in the field of that size back in the day. So hopefully that helps.
yeah.
But so they didn't really understand brand or marketing. So that was a good place to come in and kind of bring that discipline. And I helped establish their brand strategy department. But then it's interesting. You start to see a shift in businesses and in companies, or even just any company you work to, in the direction or the vision of where it's going. And for the new shift in vision with a new CEO coming in, there was a shift away from brand back to more traditional, just sales operations. So a lot of us left. I was going to work for a woman who was going to be the next senior VP of marketing at IBM. I was her chief of staff. We were going to go into that role together. But with the writing on the wall of where this company was going, we both decided to leave. And she was going to go be the chief marketing officer of Sears Holding, another company you probably have never heard of. So that was LL Bean, Sears, Kmart, all stores that, maybe Sears, Kmart you haven't heard of, but hopefully you've heard of LL Bean. But it's just a kind of a Patagonia type store, or a business. And she was going to go be the chief marketing officer there. And she said, come work for me. You can be the vice president of customer experience. I'm like, that sounds great. But she said, you have to go do something on your own for 6 months because I can't technically hire you right outside of IBM. So I did my own thing. I worked with my first client, and they were actually out in Las Vegas. It was really fun. It was Caesars Entertainment. And I got to launch a new spa, and I got to work on all sorts of real brand stuff that doesn't come with a traditional brand role. It's really a consulting role. And that was the bug that bit me. So once I did that, I decided I didn't want the VP of customer experience. I wanted to go out on my own. And I did. And luckily, knock on wood, I established the business back in 2006, and it's been going strong ever since.
Wow. Are there any problems that your business has faced or like anything that like you've struggled with? And how have you solved that?
Just about everything. Here's the thing about going out on your own. There is nothing you don't do. And if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. So you start to realize all the things you don't know. So for me, it was the basics of how do I have conference calls? How do I have, now we have Zoom. Back then, that wasn't a thing pre-COVID, right? So, nowadays everyone's up to speed on how to do Zoom and video conferencing. Back then it was over phone, and I was doing actually a lot of work on, things like WebEx. Those are the ones that we used back then. And that was a new thing. People were not really comfortable with it. They didn't exactly know how to use it. But there's obviously a level of education you have to provide when you have your own business to let people know how you're working with them. It's just not taken for granted. It's not like a transaction. It's not going to a store, picking something up and taking it home, and you're just selling it to them. You are creating a relationship, right? So it's not a transactional thing, it's a relationship thing. And you have to build that relationship with every point of interaction. So the challenge for me was I didn't have any legal experience. I'm here making contracts and coming up with ways to work with my clients in a way that protects me, but make sure they get what they need as well. So you start to become, an expert or a mini expert in contracts, and you start to seek out. And I guess this is how I handled those situations is I sought out help. So a lot of it was looking online and learning as much as I could, getting something that I felt comfortable with, whether it be from a legal perspective, a technology perspective, how do you write I've never written a statement of work, which is something you need to do from a client perspective. There's a lot of resources online that, especially now, that are there that weren't there when I was growing up, but they are there today. So there's a lot of self-learning you have to be able to do. And I think to tie that back to STEM, I think the one thing I like about STEM is that it teaches you to teach yourself, and I think that's a really important skill to have regardless of what you go into. And that is what helped me overcome my challenges, being able to teach myself based on what's out there, but then also recognizing what I don't know. And I think that's a lot of what people need to recognize to be successful is you need to know what you don't know, so then you can go find the answer. And for me, it was sometimes really easy to know that I didn't know. And I would use my connections. I think the other thing that is different now than it was, eons ago when I clearly was working for IBM, the company no one knows of today. But, what we didn't have back then were things like LinkedIn, where you can go from a professional setting and you can start to reach out to people and create these relationships. And I think for me, that was a big piece of it. I also used my family, right? So we had someone in my family that was a lawyer. So I said, hey, do you mind looking at this contract? You have to toe the line there because they're not working for you for free. You shouldn't have them do that. But it's okay, I think, to say, hey, I just need a legal set of eyes to look at this. But you can only kind of do that once or twice. I wouldn't want to overstep and start to make them feel like they're, I'm basically not paying them to do their job. So I think that's a lot of it. I think you're going to find challenges wherever you go, no matter what you go into. It's really about how resourceful you can be. And again, I do think that's one thing STEM teaches, is that ability to be resourceful, to be able to self-teach, and to really take control of the situation instead of letting the situation control you.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like really good advice. Like you can apply it anywhere. And I think it's like important to know too, because like sometimes like all these successful people, you see them and they're like, oh, they know how to do everything. But yeah, no, it's like, no, you have to learn. Even Mission Math Minds is like that. We're still like that, but yeah. So yeah, that's definitely important. I want to go back to your childhood for a second, if there's anything to say about it. What was maybe unique about it? What are some things that maybe pushed you towards the career that you have now?
That's a good question. Um, so when I grew up, STEM was not an identified thing. It was just maths class, science class, and you progress through science with, biology, chemistry, physics, and then it was AP biology, and then AP chemistry or physics or whatever the route was. But there was no sense of tying them together in a meaningful way. So I think for us, everything was siloed. There was that we missed the opportunity of what STEM does today, is to bring those disciplines together in a holistic fashion of how to apply in the real world. And so we didn't have that growing up. So there was no identity, like STEM identity back then. But I will say that, it's interesting for me that being a woman is one part of it, but being Indian is another part of it. Being Indian, I was expected to do well in the STEM classes. There was no, oh, wow, look at her, she really likes STEM. There was no liking. It was not about like, you were just expected to do well in those classes because you were Indian. And they assumed it came easy to you. It didn't for me. So while my brother could just breathe in STEM, he just had to be present in the class and it just all came into him, never had to study. I worked hard for my grades, and it was, hard because they were taken for granted. Like no one thought I was putting in the work, but I was. But ultimately, I would say growing up, while that was the situation in school, the thing that really drove me to do what I wanted to do and to follow my passions was my mom. And I give her a lot of credit for her generation. She was a very much more liberal minded woman for her generation than sometimes I give her credit for. But she was the one who insisted I be self-reliable, to never depend on anyone to thrive in life or to make my own happiness. And so she really believed there wasn't anything that should be closed off to me just because I was an Indian or a woman. And I think because of that, I just acted accordingly. I never really thought of anything as being closed off. So I would say there was her, but then there was also my 11th grade teacher of English. And this is something I think is really important. She's the one that taught me how to communicate, to how to write well and to communicate well. And I truly believe that that's important, regardless of what you want to do in life. And, I tell my kids all the time, like, you can be the smartest one in the room or have the best idea in the room, but if you can't communicate it properly, no one will ever know it. So I think that while we didn't have that kind of delineation of STEM necessarily, I think that it is pulling those things holistically together. But I would always say, take the communication side of it with it too, because if you want to launch a rocket out into space, if you can't communicate how to do that, it's not going to matter. They're not going to understand it. Then you're never going to be able to sell the idea, and you're just never going to be able to share all these wonderful things that are going on in your brain out in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't really have any other, I mean, technically there are a lot of other questions, but I think you did a really great job giving messages, multiple meaningful messages. So, is there anything else that you would like to tell everyone here listening?
Yeah, I think ultimately, I just want you to take away that it's really easy for everyone to say, just follow your passions, right? Everyone can say that, but they're saying it from the other side, right? And there's a lot of challenges that you will face. There are a lot of stereotypes that you'll face. I started off in consulting, very male dominated. And, that was a tough place to be. It was the first place I actually felt, wow, I'm a woman and this is a male dominated industry. And I think the most important thing is there's nothing you can't do, regardless if you're a woman, Indian, short like me, or anything else. And no one has the right to put you in a box. So don't let anyone ever do it. Create your own space and don't be afraid to claim it as yours. And I would say that's what I think that all of us women and girls need to tell each other. We need to empower each other. We need to be there for each other and to lift each other up. But just don't be afraid to create and claim your own space.
Okay, thank you so much. That was such a great interview.